How does a reporter who is at the top of her game quit her job as a host all of a sudden? Some of the most important news stories of our time have been told by Norah O'Donnell, who is the beloved face of CBS Evening News. Now, though, she's in the news herself because she's announced her sudden departure following a health fight that changed everything. Why did she make this move that would change her life? How did a simple skin check become a wake-up call that changed her life? Finally, what does this mean for the things she leaves behind? Follow us as we find out the whole story. Norah O'Donnell, the award-winning anchor of CBS Evening News, just said something shocking that has shocked both her co-workers and fans. For years, people have trusted her to report the news in a way that is honest, authoritative, and with poise. Her image on TV has become linked to CBS Evening News, the show she ran with unwavering commitment. Now, though, she's leaving. The news of her quitting has caused waves in the industry, and many people are wondering what could have caused her to make such an abrupt choice. There is one truth that stands out. Her leaving is not just a business move, it is very personal. Norah has always put her job first. She has talked about world events and important interviews without ever sharing much about her personal life. The problem she's been facing behind the camera, though, is much worse than any story she's ever written. It all started a week before Thanksgiving. Because the holidays were coming up, Norah, like many others, was busy with last-minute plans and work obligations. Even though she had a lot going on, she made time for a regular skin check. She had ignored it for years, putting it further down her list of things to do. This time, though, she finally did what she said she would do. She thought her trip to the dermatologist's office would be plain old, a quick checkup before she went about her day. She had no reason to think anything was wrong, after all. Like many other kids, she had spent her childhood laying in the sun, but she never really thought about what would happen in the future. While the doctor was looking at her skin, there was a short pause that Norah realized later was the start of something much worse. The doctor noticed a small mole on her back that didn't seem important. He said to do a sample just to be sure. Norah agreed without giving it much thought. It was a normal process, so there was no need to worry. She thought that at least. After a few days, Norah's phone rang while she was shopping for the holidays. It was from her doctor. The subject line was short and scary. "I'm sorry to bother you over the holidays, but the results of your biopsy are in and we need to talk." This made her heart sink. Reading those words over and over, she stared at the screen and wished they would change. In a hurry, she sent the email to her sister to reassure her. "Most likely nothing serious," her sister told her. "It could be basal or squamous cell carcinoma. Mom and Dad had those before, and they could be treated." But Norah had a feeling that this was different. She had a lot of questions in her head. Why couldn't it wait until after the break if it was nothing important? What's the hurry? Why now? She was filled with a terrible fear. She picked up the phone and called her doctor, but her hands were shaking. The specialist who had checked her out, Dr. Elizabeth Hale, replied right away. She didn't say anything for a while. A sample showed that Norah had melanoma. The news hit her like a freight train. Melanoma is the most dangerous type of skin cancer. The only thought that was going through her head was one that no one wants to think about. Was she going to die? Norah tried to pay attention as Dr. Hale talked about what this meant, but the words got mixed up. The people around her, the Christmas shoppers, and the bright lights were all gone. The room seemed to have lost all of its air. The voice of the doctor made her move back. "Are you still with me?" Dr. Hale asked. Norah forced herself to concentrate by taking a deep breath. She answered, "Yes, I'm here." The doctor then told her that melanoma was a dangerous type of skin cancer that could spread quickly if it wasn't handled. If there was any good news, it was that they caught it early. Norah walked through the busy crowd as she left the store, barely aware of what was going on around her. She had tears in her eyes and her chest hurt. She got to her car, sat down in the driver's seat, and looked at her phone's report. Melanoma is already there. She could see the words, but she wasn't sure what they meant. She looked up the word quickly and learned that in situ came from Latin and meant in place. This meant that the melanoma was still only on the top layer of her skin. It wasn't deep enough yet that it could get into the bloodstream or lymphatic system and become much more dangerous. This was cancer in its early stages, so it wasn't directly dangerous to life. It all became real to her at once. She thought about her 3 kids. Riley, who is 8 years old, and Henry and Grace, who are 9 years old. How would she tell them this? Would they get it? What's more, would they be scared? Norah had spent her whole career writing about disasters all over the world. But now she was going through a crisis of her own. It was easy to feel guilty. Why did she wait so long to get checked out? She had always been careful and put her health first. How could she have forgotten about this? That night, she sat at her kitchen table and looked at the report over and over again in her mind. She thought about her childhood in San Antonio, where it was very hot in the summer and she spent a lot of time by the pool. Sunscreen was not planned. Then there was high school, when she and her friends went to tanning shops to get that sun-kissed look before prom. At the time, it all seemed safe. After many years, though, those decisions had caught up with her. She had to have surgery soon, as her doctor had made clear. We couldn't waste any time. Early discovery had helped her, but melanoma could come back at any time. It could have been a lot worse if they hadn't caught it when they did. Norah didn't think twice. The surgery was planned for as soon as possible. She did not wish to wait. She didn't have the money to. That night, as she lay in bed, the weight of everything hit her. It was more than just the news, and it was about everything it stood for. How fragile life is, how unpredictable health is, and how everyone, even those who seem unbeatable, is vulnerable to the unexpected. She thought about her job and how hard it was and how responsible it was to be the face of CBS Evening News. Could she keep doing everything while this was going on? Does she really want to? With the coming of morning, a new thought began to form. This report may not have been just a warning. It could have been a sign that something needed to change. But how would that change look? She was going to have to answer that question soon. Norah O'Donnell knew she didn't have much time left. Being told the news had woken me up and shown me how quickly life can change. Everything else took a back seat once she planned the surgery. Her health was more important than any work, deadlines, or tasks. She had always been a very careful planner, someone who liked order and getting things ready. But nothing could have made her ready for this. The morning of the surgery came faster than she had planned. She tried to keep her feelings in check, but as soon as she walked into the hospital, she felt anxious. It seemed impossible, what with the strong smell of germs, the bright lights above, and the soft whispers of nurses walking through the halls. She had spent years working as a reporter in hospitals, telling the stories of people who were fighting illnesses that could have killed them. She was now on the operation table. It was an odd and disturbing change. Before starting, the surgeon went over the process again. She rarely thought to check that part of her back, but the cancer was there. The doctor would cut out the damaged area and make sure there were no more cancerous cells left. The borders would be clear if everything went well, which means the cancer had not spread. Even though it was supposed to be a simple process, the weight of what it meant made it feel much more important. The cut was 3 inches long, which was longer than she thought it would be. It was both comfortable and scary to think about getting rid of the cancer cells in her body. She told herself she was lucky while the stitches were being put in. Things could have gone much worse. If she had waited even a few months longer, the cancer might have spread to her lymph nodes and veins, making it much less likely that she would have lived. As soon as she got home that night, she was completely worn out. It wasn't just physical, it was also mental. She had been strong, determined, and focused on the facts for a long time. But when she saw the bandages on her back, she realized how bad things really were. She had cancer of the skin. She had surgery. She would have this scar for the rest of her life. Her kids were waiting for her, and their eyes were full of worry and interest. Even though she tried to keep them from the worst of it, they were smart. They knew something was wrong. She sat them down and tried to make everything as clear as she could. It wasn't simple. They wanted to know if she would be okay, if the cancer would come back, and if this was something she would have to go through again. The truth was that she didn't have all the answers, but she did try to encourage them. Over the next few weeks, Norah got used to her new life. When she went back to work, she tried to continue where she left off, but something had changed. It didn't feel the same anymore. The long hours, the high-stress atmosphere, and the constant stream of news. She had given the job her all before, but now she wasn't sure if she could keep doing it. Could she keep up the same level of commitment while also putting her health first? It wasn't clear what to do, so more questions kept coming. Each follow-up visit to the doctor was a warning that things were still not over. She would have to have monthly skin checks and be watched all the time. There was always a chance that the cancer would come back. In the background of her mind, the thought stayed there while she worked. The work she had to do hadn't changed. As one of the most well-known reporters in the country, there were still late nights, breaking news, and the weight of that fame. But for the first time in her work, she couldn't ignore a conflict inside her. She enjoyed what she did. It took her years of hard work to become the host of CBS Evening News. On the other hand, she knew more than ever that she couldn't take her health for granted. Her team also saw that she had changed. She wasn't taking on extra work as quickly and wasn't staying at the office until the wee hours of the morning like she used to. She had always been strong and never let anything stop her. But cancer had made that different. She had to take a step back and think about what was most important. Then she had to make the choice she had been dreading. She had been thinking about it since she was told she had the disease, but she had put it off so she could find a balance. But it was clear that balance was not possible. There had to be a sacrifice. She thought about it for weeks before she knew what she had to do. She set up a meeting with top executives at CBS because she knew that the talk would make a huge difference. The newsroom had become like a second home to her over the years. It was where she built her job, her name, and her legacy. She took a deep breath, sat down across from the network's top leaders, and said the words that had been bothering her. "I need to leave." The room went quiet. Even though they knew she had been having a rough time, this was not what they were expecting. Norah had always been one of the toughest people in news. She did great when things got tough. But this wasn't about stress, it was about staying alive. She felt both relieved and sad as she talked about her reasons. However, she was leaving the job that had defined her for the past 5 years. She wasn't quitting her job totally. The evening news at CBS wasn't just a job, it was a duty. It needed her full attention, which she couldn't give without putting her health at risk. Even though the conversation got heated, the network finally got it. Even though they knew it would leave a big hole, they respected her choice. They started to make plans for the changeover. They talked about who could take her place and how they would tell everyone about it. The hardest part for Norah wasn't telling the bosses. It told people what to watch. She had spent years getting to know them and telling them the news in a way that they could trust. She had to say goodbye now. It was a quiet evening when the news came out. As she sat at the anchor desk, she thought about what she was going to say for a moment. The red light flashed, the cameras rolled, and she spoke right to the crowd. "It has been an honor to bring you the news every night for the past 5 years. One of the best things about my life is having this job. But sometimes problems in life make us take a step back, think again, and decide what's most important. So, with a heavy heart, I'm giving up this job." There was no way to get ready for the response. Everyone had something to say: co-workers, viewers, and people who work in the business. Some people were shocked. Some people were sad. A lot of people said nice things to cheer them up and help them. She felt a range of feelings when the show ended: relieved, sad, and thankful. The things she had to do were done. She picked the best option for herself and her future. She was leaving her job as a reporter, but that didn't mean the end of her career. It was just the start of something new. There was a different vibe in the office that night. Norah O'Donnell had just quit CBS Evening News for good, but the studio didn't feel as lively as normal. Instead, there was a quiet sense of closure. As soon as the cameras stopped rolling, her co-workers crowded around her and spoke words of thanks, sadness, and respect. She had been sitting in this chair for years, telling the world's most important news with accuracy and honesty. It's now over. She thought she would feel relieved, but all she felt was a heavy weight of doubt. She didn't expect how heavy it would be to leave behind something that had defined her for so long. She was ready for how people would react, because she knew the news would come quickly. As soon as she left, news sources started to talk about it. People responded, sent messages of support and admiration, and asked what had made her make her choice on social media in droves. Even though she was honest about her diagnosis and the need to put her health first, the rumors kept going. She got messages all the time on her phone from friends, co-workers, and people who had watched her for years. There were people who told her they would miss seeing her on TV. Others talked about health scares they had been through and how her honesty about having cancer made them want to get their own checked out. The part about that gave her a reason to do it. Leaving CBS Evening News seemed like even more of the right thing to do if it could help other people avoid what she had been through. Her mind kept going back to the events that had shaped her work as the night went on. It had been an amazing trip, with high-stakes interviews, breaking news stories, and long nights spent getting ready for shows. But she also thought about what she had to give up, the times she missed with her family, and the stress of being in the public eye all the time. She had told herself for years that the stress was part of the job and that working hard even when she was tired was what made her successful. It took being told she had cancer to change her mind. With no longer having to worry about newsroom schedules and breaking news alerts, she had to get used to a new routine in the days after she left. It was strange, but in many ways, it had to be done. She had time to think about herself for the first time in years. She checked in with her doctors to make sure her healing was going well. She rested, spent time with her family, and thought about what had happened. She was no longer the face of CBS Evening News, but she wasn't leaving news completely. The network gave her a new job that let her keep working but didn't require her to work around the clock. She would still be able to cover big stories, do in-depth investigations, and add to special reports as a senior correspondent. It was the mix she had been looking for, a way to keep working at the job she loved while also putting her health and happiness first. She wasn't ready for her first task in this new job to come up so quickly. There wasn't any breaking news or political commentary in it. Instead, it was very personal and an in-depth story on melanoma, how to raise awareness about skin cancer, and how important it is to find it early. The illness that made her take a break is now the focus of her most recent work. It was like coming full circle, a chance to make something painful into something important. The study was personal. She talked to dermatologists, oncologists, and people who had been through the same thing. She learned about new treatments, how melanoma rates are going up, and how important it is to teach people how to stay safe in the sun. It was hard to believe the numbers. Melanoma was one of the most dangerous types of skin cancer, but it was also one of the easiest to avoid. Early discovery could save lives, but too many people didn't pay attention to the signs until it was too late. She was working on the piece when she remembered all the years she had spent in the sun without wearing sunscreen. She remembered going to tanning shops as a teen and putting off regular checkups for too long. She couldn't change the things she did in the past, but she could teach other people from her position. There were a lot of reactions when the special story aired. People who had planned skin checks after hearing her story, doctors who thanked her for spreading awareness, and survivors who shared their own stories all sent her messages. What she felt was different from what she felt at the news desk, but it was just as important in many ways. Still, there were times when she missed working in the office. She missed the routine of giving the evening news and the sense of purpose that came with being a reliable source of news. But she also knew that this new part had to happen. She couldn't just take her health for granted. She was lucky that her cancer was found early. Not everyone had the same luck. As the months went by, she kept working as a reporter, balancing her work as an investigator with her work to raise awareness about health issues. She gave talks at events and worked with groups that worked to stop skin cancer. Her goal was to get people to pay attention to their health. She wasn't just reading the news anymore, she was doing something bigger with her voice. As she worked on her next report at home one afternoon, she looked at her phone and saw a message reminding her of her next dermatologist appointment. She gave herself a smile. She wasn't going to put it off this time. That was her mistake. And now she was going to help other people avoid it. The change for Norah O'Donnell in her new job was unlike anything else she had done in her career. Being the host of CBS Evening News, which was very fast-paced, had always made her feel in charge and like she was in the middle of history as it happened. But leaving the anchor desk made her think about what the media really meant to her. She had been telling people the news for years. She was going into more detail now and giving the stories the time and attention they needed. She had no idea how many people would be interested in her special story on melanoma. She didn't expect it to reach so many people. She got emails from viewers who had planned their first skin checks and from parents telling their teens to be careful about the sun. She even got emails from co-workers who admitted they had put their careers ahead of their health. The effect was real, which made her want to do even more. She had spent most of her work telling other people's stories. Now her own has become a way to teach, to speak out, and to make a difference. As a senior correspondent, her job gave her the chance to keep working on that goal. She went on trips, talked to a lot of people in depth, and worked on long-form investigative pieces that dealt with important topics. It was journalism without the everyday pressures of evening news, and it gave her the freedom she didn't know she needed. She still loved the thrill of telling stories, the search for the truth, and the duty that came with giving information. She could do it her way now that she had time. Even though she was going on, she still thought about what she had left behind from time to time. She had lived in the office for a long time, and there were days when she missed the thrill of live reporting, the camaraderie of her team, and the organized chaos of getting the evening's most important stories out. Though the reason she had chosen was always clear when she thought about it. The worry, the long hours, and the constant pace had worn her down, but she had ignored it for too long. The news of her diagnosis had made her think about what was really important. She wasn't going to waste the second chance that was given to her. In ways she had never done before, she put her health first. She never missed a follow-up meeting. She took better care of her skin by making sure she wore sunscreen every day, which she hadn't done in years. She told her kids to do the same thing and made sure they knew that being safe in the sun meant more than just avoiding getting burned. It also meant protecting their health in the future. Besides her personal life, she felt more fulfilled when she used her voice to fight for causes. She did more to get people interested in melanoma study and prevention. She worked with groups that taught people about skin cancer and used her fame to spread lessons that could save lives. She had spent years telling people news that changed the world. Now she was thinking about something that had changed her life in the strangest way. It was a change, but it felt good. Being able to say that her story had changed things and that her stage had been used for something important made her feel very good. For a lot of her work, she had brought attention to other people's problems and successes. She was now open to the idea that what she was going through could be just as strong. She was sure that she would always be a writer at heart as she got used to this new life. There had been no change in their desire to learn, find the truth, or tell stories. What had changed was how she thought about balance and how to do the work she loved while also taking care of herself. Her whole life had been about moving forward and never slowing down. With a better sense of what was important, she had now found a way to move forward with meaning and purpose. She caught a glimpse of herself in the window one evening as she went over notes for an upcoming investigation report. The same drive and fire that had driven her work from the start was still there. Peace was also there. When she went into the dermatologist's office before Thanksgiving, she wasn't the same person. She didn't know the news that would change everything. She was smarter, stronger, and more in touch with what she needed to do well. Even though it wasn't easy, her path took her right where she needed to be. She was leaving one part of her job behind, but it made room for a new one. And this chapter was really just getting started in many ways.